Chess YouTube, Gukesh D, he has done it. He just invented a brand new chess opening in round 9 of the 2025 Norway Chess Classic, and this new opening, I'm calling it the Indian Flamingo, and you are about to see why. All right, in the game, Gukesh, playing as white, opens 1e4, best by test, and Wei Yi, his Chinese opponent, goes e5. Then we have knight f3, and then knight to f6. Wei Yi opts for the Petroff Defense, one of the most solid defenses against 1e4. Now, from here, Gukesh, he follows the main line. Knight takes e5, winning the pawn. Black goes d6, driving back that knight. Then we have knight to f3, knight takes, and from here, the main line for white goes d4, bishop d3, and castles. That is the most logical way to play as white here. Instead, Gukesh goes for an older and maybe even slightly forgotten line. That is the move, knight to c3, immediately challenging the black knight on e4. Now, what is the idea here? It's simple. Black most likely will take on c3. If he goes back to, say, f6, white can go d4, bishop d3, and castles with a very, very good game and likely a small edge. Now, instead, the main move here for black is taking on c3 like this. Now here, if you're a beginner, you may say the best move here is likely b takes c3, capturing towards the center. However, in this position, d takes is actually a little bit stronger. The idea being if you take with a d pawn, then this diagonal is opened up for your bishop, and you can go, for example, bishop e3, queen d2, and long castles, getting a very good game with a very aggressive attacking setup. Now, from here, black goes bishop d7, white goes bishop e3, very standard stuff. Black castles, and here the main move by far, really the only move that white players play at the highest level, is simply queen d2, intending long castles. However, Gukesh, he has a very specific idea in mind for this game. He plays his new move, queen to d3. Gukesh, what on earth did you just uncork in this game? Queen to d3 instead of queen d2? This makes no sense. You block in the bishop, prevent bishop d3 ideas. What is the queen doing on this square? I checked. This move right here has never been played before by 2 super grandmasters, and there's really only about 5 games total with this move played. I'm calling this right here the Indian Flamingo because, like a flamingo, this move, it's very flashy, but makes absolutely no sense. All right, from here, black, what's the idea? He goes knight d7. Gukesh, he castles. And of course, don't get me wrong, Gukesh D, he knows what he is doing. He clearly prepped this line in advance for white. He must have his ideas, but still, this move, to me, to my amateur mind, it doesn't make any sense. I guess the idea is the surprise and shock value. All right, here, Wei Yi, he goes knight c5, challenging the queen on d3. The queen has to move. Where is it going to go? It goes to c4. Okay, very interesting. The queen so far going from d1 to d3 and then c4 is the idea. I mean, honestly, I have no idea what the idea is here. Let's just keep going. All right, black, bishop e6, challenging the queen. It turns out this move right here is maybe a little bit imprecise. The easiest way for black to equalize is simply b6, intending bishop b7. Instead, bishop e6, a logical move, pressuring the queen again, and again the queen has to move. Now from here, Gukesh, queen to f4 is the move. All right, so far the queen going from d1 to d3 to c4 to f4. All right, black here, he goes d5, the strongest move by far, and Gukesh, knight to d4 is the move, putting pressure on the bishop. And so far, Gukesh, despite the weird first few moves here, he is getting quite a decent position. He's got some pressure on the center, some pressure on the king side. He may want to go, for example, king b1, bishop d3, h4, h5, h6. He's got some ideas here. He's got some play. All right, black, bishop d6. Once again, Wei Yi is challenging the queen, and once again, the queen must move. From here, the queen goes back to the f3 square, although I do want to point out taking on e6 is actually somewhat playable, as from there, the knight does attack the queen, and if black takes on f4, you take on d8 with the intermezzo move, and it does work out decently in your favor. Instead, queen to f3 played in the game. Now, so far, the queen went from d1 to d3 to c4 to f4 to f3. My goodness. All right, Gukesh, the Indian Flamingo, what a weird new opening. All right, black, queen d7. So far, Wei Yi playing very classical chess, getting all his pieces out developed in the center, controlling the center. So far, Wei Yi playing a really, really solid game. Now, of course, white has the option of taking on e6 like this, but then black has the option of taking back with the f pawn, recapturing towards the center, getting an extra center pawn and the open f file to attack the queen. Overall, that looks like it's maybe working in Wei Yi's favor. Therefore, here, Gukesh, he does not do that. Instead, he plays the move h3. So, not a bad idea. First of all, obviously, black here is threatening the skewer, bishop g4, winning the rook on d1. Therefore, you have to block the attack, and h3 is quite a good way to do it, although other ideas like, for example, bishop e2 are also possible, controlling g4. So, h3 played in the game, a decent idea. Now Wei Yi c6, defending d5, and setting up b5 ideas. So, a good overall move. And now Gukesh, g4, gaining even more space on the king side. Maybe the idea is g5, h4, h5, g6. We'll have to wait and see. Now, Wei Yi, what should he be doing here? Well, the computer says the best way to proceed is rook a to e8, followed by b5, starting the queenside attack with the pawn storm. Instead, Wei Yi plays a very committal move, a very double-edged idea. The move is f5. Now, this is where things get really, really tense. Black here obviously is threatening to capture on g4 with the double attack on the queen with the pawn on g4 and the rook. And of course, in that scenario, the pawn on g4 could not be taken as the bishop does control that square. So here, Gukesh, he has to find the right response right now, right here in this new opening, the Indian Flamingo. What is it going to be? Here, Gukesh. The strongest move is simply taking on e6 like this. Instead, Gukesh goes g5, gaining space. But this move, I mean, yes, you do keep the kingside closed for now. However, you give Wei Yi the chance to go f4, gaining more space and locking this bishop out of the game. And that's exactly what he goes for. So f4 is the move. Bishop d2 is now forced. And suddenly, white's pieces are looking maybe a little bit passive. His rook on d1, the bishop, this rook, I mean, all of these pieces, they're not doing that much. And Wei Yi, rook a to e8. I mean, compare white's game to black's game. Literally every single one of black's pieces are nearly perfectly placed in this position. All right, from here, Gukesh, rook g1 is the move, defending this pawn and setting up the idea of h4, h5, g6. Of course, black is going to have plenty of ideas as well. And here, Wei Yi plays the move bishop to f5. All right, from here, Gukesh, he takes on f5. We have knight takes, then queen takes, and then a very strong move, c4, finally getting some counterplay on the queen side. The threat here is simply taking on d5, trying to force black to get a weak, isolated pawn on d5 after either c takes, or c takes, queen takes, and then c takes. So what will the Chinese grandmaster do right here? In the game, black goes knight to e4. All right, the idea is you reduce the pressure on d5 as the knight clogs up this diagonal. From here, Gukesh, bishop d3, a logical move. Finally, the bishop gets into the game on move 21, and it's a very strong piece now. It defends c4, it pressures the knight, it pins the knight to the queen, and so on. And here, Wei Yi, he finally makes a little bit of a mistake. Queen to e5 was played. However, instead of that, bishop c5 is best, pressuring f2 immediately. Instead, queen to e5 chosen. The idea is he's trying to step out of the pin of the bishop. However, Gukesh, rook D to e1, lining up the rook with the queen. Now the knight is once again pinned, once again, it cannot move. And what is black going to do? In the game, bishop c5 is chosen, pressuring f2. But here, he simply takes on d5. C takes d5. Black has no time to take on f2 with the bishop, as then you lose the knight. So the move here is c takes, and then rook to e2 defends the pawn. Now, Wei Yi, once again, he's got to find the right move here. How do you proceed here? I mean, first of all, this knight, it cannot move. It's pinned by the rook to the queen. Beyond that, of course, we do have the opposite sides castling scenario with the kings on c1 and g8. Therefore, attacking on the queen side is most likely the right idea. So how can Wei Yi get the attack going on the queen side? Well, it turns out the pawn sacrifice, b5, is the best way to go. The point being, if you go b5 and white takes, you go rook to b8, lining up the rook on the open b file and pressuring b2 behind the bishop, and black gets an excellent game. Instead of that, here, black takes on d2. We have knight takes d2, but this is a big mistake. And here, Gukesh finds an absolutely brilliant move. If you like puzzles, pause the video right now and try to find this one move brilliancy for Gukesh. Here, Gukesh, he finds the right idea. The move here is bishop takes h7. What is the idea? It's simple. First of all, the queen on f3, it's under attack. However, if you take on d2, like this or this, black is doing okay. Instead, you take on h7, the idea being, if the king takes, you play the move queen to h5, you attack the king's under check, it has to go back to g8, and then you take on d5, winning the queen of black. So here, Wei Yi, he sees this, and he goes king to h8, sliding the king over. But now Gukesh, he simply takes on d2. Rook takes d2, black takes on h7, king takes, and then we have rook takes d5. So Gukesh here, he's technically down a piece. He's got 2 pawns for the piece. However, the big deciding factor here is the safety of the black king. Sooner or later, white is going to go g6, forcing king g8 or h8, basically entombing the king on the back rank in the corner of the board forever. All right, right now, the queen, it's under attack. Black goes queen to e2, sliding down. Now here, white has the option of taking on e2 like this, and then on c5. But first, white inserts the very strong intermediate move, g6, hitting the king with check, forcing it back. It's got to go back to, say, g8 or h8. If it goes to h6, then bang, queen to h5 would be checkmate. So instead, king g8 chosen in the game, and now we have the very strong move, queen to b3. Gukesh, he keeps the queens on the board, and now he threatens all kinds of discovered attacks with the rook, including rook to e5, cleaning up, winning the queen, as the king would be under check. All right, what is Wei Yi going to do? Right here, he makes a very shocking idea, but it's not very strong. Bishop to e3. What is the idea here? First of all, you attack the king with check. And now Gukesh, he has the option of taking on e3 with the f-pawn. However, if you do that, black takes back with the queen, hits the king on c1 as well as the queen, and forces the queens off the board. Gukesh, he sees this, and he wants the queens on the board at all costs because he has such a huge attack against the black king. So here, he simply slides the king over. King b1 is the move. A very strong move. And what is black going to do? Of course, the threat right here is rook d2, hitting the king with check as well as the queen. Therefore, king to h8 is virtually forced. And now white takes on e3. We have f takes, then rook takes, and then queen to b4, sliding out of the attack of the rook and attacking the rook on f8. Black goes rook c8, threatening queen takes c2, king a1, and then queen c1, rook takes, and then rook takes c1. That would be checkmate. So here, white's got to respond. The move is rook c1, defending c2 in advance. Now black, rook to e4, attacks the queen. Queen to a5, gets out of the attack, and then we have king to g8. Now here, Gukesh, he's got all the time in the world to do effectively whatever he wants here. He's also ahead on the clock. So what should he be doing here? It turns out rook d8, trading one pair of rooks, is a very strong idea. Instead, Gukesh, he plays the move b3. And in my opinion, I think the idea behind this move, Gukesh, he knows he's got a massive edge here. First of all, he's up 1 pawn, but more importantly, the king on g8, again, is just entombed forever. So here, I think he played the move b3 with the idea being of giving his king some space on b2 to go to if he needs it, and avoiding future back rank mating threats. All right, black here. Rook e to e8 is the move, defending d8, stopping any kind of rook d8 nonsense. But here, Gukesh, he simply takes on a7. Queen takes a7, and he wins another pawn. All right, black, queen to e6 is the move. The queen flies back, then queen d4, then f3. Wei Yi pushing the passed pawn down the board. He's fighting for counterplay. But Gukesh, rook g5 is the move, defending g6. Now queen to e4. We have queen takes, and then rook to f5. And in this position, Wei Yi, he simply resigns on the spot to Gukesh. The point is, this pawn on f3, it will be lost sooner or later. For example, if black goes rook to e3, then rook c to f1 wins the pawn for sure and wins the game, as white is just up. I mean, he's going to be up 1, 2, 3 pawns. That is more than enough for Gukesh, the world champion, to win this game. Therefore, Wei Yi, he's simply forced to resign on the spot to Gukesh. Wow, what a game by Gukesh. In particular, his brand new opening, let's call it the Indian Flamingo, after 7 castles, queen to d3. Again, this move has been played a few times, a handful of times between low-level players, but never between 2 super grandmasters like Gukesh and Wei Yi right here in this game. A very impressive game by the world champion. All right, Chess YouTube, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, comment down below. What do you think of the new opening by Gukesh, the Indian Flamingo? I mean, personally, I love it. The idea being you're kind of just trying to get surprise value in, but it works fabulously in this game. Now, if you want to support the channel, go ahead and smash that YouTube like button. Thank you so much for doing that. And as always, I wish you the best of luck in your chess improvement journey in 2025 and beyond. And I'll see you in the next video.